Sport inspires greatness. It uncovers the fastest and the bravest, delivering moments that reverberate through history. But who deserves the honor of the greatest of all time? Sprinting is a universal experience. Running fast has always been prized, whether it's fleeing from danger or racing to glory. But who is the greatest sprinter of all? Only one man can boast that he has run faster than anyone else in history. The fastest man to ever walk the planet.
He's really turning it on in this final. Dixon second place, Lemaitre third, but there's only one Yusein Bolt. One of the fastest times in history again.
I want to be among the greats, and without this Olympics, I would be great, yes, but I don't think I would be in the bracket as Muhammad Ali and Pele and the great footballers. When people are talking about, you have to work hard to be the best, they say that. Look at Yusein Bolt, you know what I mean? Look at Muhammad Ali. I want to be in that sentence. That's what I'm working toward.
Usain St. Leo Bolt has sprinting's best CV. The 100 meters at the Olympic Games is the most prestigious event at the greatest sporting competition in the world. Bolt is the only man to win it 3 times in a row. For good measure, he's the only man to win a hat-trick of 200 meters gold medals. And if that wasn't enough, his Jamaican 4x100 meters relay team crossed the line first on 3 occasions. Although their 2008 gold medal was later rescinded after one of Bolt's compatriots was found guilty of doping.
To do that again in 2016 to 3 different times is incredible. I mean, it is on par with nothing, really. I mean, I think that's really, I can't think of anything that, you could compare that to.
For me, that's what I'm here for. I told you guys I'm here to show the world that I'm the best. I want to be undoubtedly one of the greatest sprinters ever to have ever competed in this sport.
Bolt first broke the 100 meters world record in New York in 2008. He bettered the mark at the Beijing Olympics later that year, then lowered his record again at the following year's World Championships.
The world of athletics doesn't often have a superstar, but they certainly have one now.
Bolt was the first man to run under 9.70 seconds, and he retired the only man to ever dip under 9.60. If, as seems likely, his mark of 9.58 survives the current Olympiad, he will have custody over the accolade as the fastest man on Earth for the longest ever period.
I think no athlete will ever wish their world record would ever be broken in their lifetime, you know what I mean? I don't want to see it go. I want to brag to my kids when they're 15 or 20 and say, look, see, I'm still the best.
By every measure of performance, Usain Bolt's greatness is impossible to refute. But are there other contenders for the title of the greatest of all time? Long before Usain Bolt arrived on the scene, athletes were taking off down the home straight at breakneck speeds. The first Olympic sprinting champion was Thomas Burke, and his winning time at Athens 1896 was a comparatively sedate 12 seconds. Burke was a Boston law student, and he employed a revolutionary crouch at the start. When he won, everyone copied his style. Not everyone emulated Charlie Paddock, winner at Antwerp 1920, although his striking leaping finish did ensure he became the first real superstar of the 100 meters. A year later, Paddock lowered the world record to 10.4, and as a prominent newspaperman, writer and actor, was the first to market himself as the world's fastest human. 4 years later in Paris, Harold Abrahams also found an Olympic gold medal opened many doors. ascending to chairman of the British Amateur Athletics Association. Then, nearly 60 years after his win, he found even greater fame when the Oscar-winning movie Chariots of Fire immortalized his story. But for all the small steps of those early pioneers, it wasn't until Jesse Owens arrived that the sport of sprinting took a giant leap. When Owens was 9, his family left Alabama as part of the Great Migration, when 1.5 million African Americans left the segregated South for the urban and industrial North. Christened James Cleveland Owens, when the youngster was asked his name by his new teacher in Ohio, he gave his initials JC. But because of his strong Southern accent, the teacher heard Jesse, and the name stuck. Owens wasted little time demonstrating his talent, breaking records at the high school level and continuing his progression at Ohio State University, where he won a record 8 individual NCAA championships, 4 each in 1935 and 1936. During this period, he rose to prominence by breaking 3 world records and tying a 4th in a 45-minute spell that may be the most incredible performance in track and field history.
I was fortunate enough tonight to break the world's record, first with the leap of 25 feet, 7 1/4 inches, and last with a leap of 25 feet, 9 inches, realizing some of my ambitions.
It was clear that Owens was the preeminent athlete in the world and primed to dominate the upcoming Olympics. The 1936 Games were held in Germany under the rule of Adolf Hitler, and to his Nazi machine, the event was a propaganda gift.
The propaganda that the Nazi Party wanted to put forward, which was centered in the idea that the Aryan race would perform in a superior way in those Olympics.
But in the race to establish the fastest man on the planet, Owens not only won gold, but equaled the world record in the process.
Jesse Owens broke that myth right at the start, capturing 4 gold medals in the Olympics and dominating track and field.
After the 100 meters, Owens set new Olympic records in the 200 and long jump before combining with his US teammates to break the 4x100 meters relay world record. I let my feet spend as little time on the ground as possible. From the air fast down and from the ground fast up, Owens said. The 1936 Olympics may have begun as Hitler's Games, but they ended as Owens. Following the Second World War, Bobby Morrow established himself as the fastest man of the 50s, winning the 100 and 200 meter double and the relay at the 1956 Melbourne Olympics. But that was merely a prelude to an explosive 1960s, when sprinting took another quantum leap.
Bob Hayes, the fastest man in the world. Hayes went like an express train, but at the tape only just managed to head Ron Jones.
First, with Bob Hayes equalizing the world record of 10 seconds flat in Tokyo 1964. And then Jim Hines becoming the first man to officially break the 10-second barrier at Mexico 68. Hines was electronically timed at 9.95 seconds. It would be 15 years until his mark was bettered by Kálvin Smith. 19 before it was temporarily broken by the disgraced drug cheat Ben Τζόνσον, and 20 before Carl Lewis finally emerged from the controversial games of Seoul 1988 with the gold medal and a world record of 9.92 seconds. In the family tree of sprinting, Lewis is the man who links the historic achievements of Owens to the modern records of Bolt. How good was he? The International Olympic Committee voted him the sportsman of the 20th century. Lewis was marked out for greatness early. In 1981, aged only 19, he ran the 3rd fastest 100 meters in history. With Los Angeles hosting the Olympics in 1984, talk of the home favorite emulating Owens was the story of the Games.
Anyone can be beaten, and that's why you have to run the race that day. I wish that I could have just mailed in those 9 gold medals and just said, oh, it's okay, I'm the favorite, they give it to me. You have to run that day, and everyone can be beaten, and anyone can win.
But at LA 84, Lewis was the only sprinter who could win. He took the 100 in 9.99, ran the 200 in the third fastest time in history, and broke the world record in the relay. He also won the long jump by an embarrassing margin with his first leap. Aged 24, Lewis had matched Owen's at a canter. But unlike Owen's before him and Bolt afterwards, Lewis did not endear himself to outsiders. Record-breaking 400 meters hurdler Edwin Moses put it succinctly: "A little humility is in order. That's what Karl lacks." Humility or not, Lewis was a winner, especially in the long jump. He went undefeated for 7 years in the event, adding to his LA success with golds in Seoul, Barcelona, and Atlanta. But while his dominance on the takeoff board was unrivaled, other sprinters were beginning to challenge him on the track. Most notably, Canada's Ben Τζόνσον. But all was not as it appeared. Sprinting was hurtling into an era mired in doping, destroying the careers of some of the fastest men in history. From the birth of civilization, the race from A to B has been the simplest sporting contest. And since 1896, the most dynamic distance has been the 100 meters. It's fast, it's furious, and fabulous. But when Ben Τζόνσον was thrown out of the Seoul Olympics in 1988 for failing a drug test, and his records ripped up, it began a dark period in the sport where sprinting was synonymous with doping. Johnson's disqualification after crossing the line first in a world record time left Carl Lewis as sprinting's first repeat Olympic champion and the world record holder. But for the next generation, he and every sprinter who flashed up the straight in under 10 seconds was viewed with suspicion. Of the top 5 competitors in the 1988 gold medal race, only eventual bronze medalist Kálvin Smith never failed a drug test during his career. This list includes Lewis, who was found to have stimulants in his system during the US trials for Seoul. But the US Olympic Committee accepted his defense of inadvertent use. Lewis later said, "It's ridiculous. Who cares? There were hundreds of people getting off. Everyone was treated the same." With 9 Olympic gold medals spanning 4 games, Lewis has exalted status within the track and field fraternity. But he was a product of his era, and it is one that has an uncomfortable legacy.
Drug use, speaking out for, especially for men and women of color.
By the time Γιουσέιν Μπολτ broke the world record in 2008, bad news from the drug testers was almost expected. Although Bolt was a prominent spokesman for clean sport and retired with his reputation untarnished, it was understandable there were doubts. Because on the list of the top 10 fastest sprinters in history to the end of 2020, only 3 have avoided suspension for doping. Further, Ben Τζόνσον would be on that list, but his times have been annulled, as was Tim Montgomery's then world record of 9.78 in 2002. Who knows if any of these men could have gone on to dominate running clean? Because they didn't, Bolt's emergence was profound on and off the track.
I think we owe him, as not in just in athletics, in all sports, owe him a lot, and how he does it is incredible.
It's great for us as people that humanity can throw up this level of performance.
He probably saved the sport, so that kind of tells you the stature of the man.
Dixon second place, Lemaitre third, but there's only one Yusein Bolt, one of the fastest times in history again.
If you were following me since 2002, you'll know that I've been doing phenomenal things since I was 15. I was the youngest person to win the World Juniors at 15. around the World Junior record, 1993 at 18, World Youth record at 17. I've broken every record there is to break in every event I've ever done. So for me, I've proven myself since I was 15.
Bolt's supreme talent restored trust to his sport. He proved to the world that unimaginable feats could be accomplished without performance-enhancing drugs. And for that, his legacy extends far beyond records and medals. The best illustration of Bolt as sprinting's great avenger came in 2015. At the World Championships, he was attempting a fourth consecutive 100 meters title. His main rival in Beijing was Justin Gatlin, an American with 2 suspensions on his record for taking prohibited substances. It was billed as good versus evil. Gatlin qualified the faster of the pair and was the leading runner on the circuit that season. Bolt won the gold medal by the narrowest of margins.
Yusain Bolt is a genius. I can't think of, other than Muhammad Ali in my sporting lifetime, I can't think of anybody that has so had an impact inside or beyond their sport. And we can have arguments about Pele and Maradona or Federer or, you know, going back a few generations, Rod Laver, but there's no argument about this guy in sprinting. He is the best sprinter of all time.
Sebastian Coe has no doubts about Usain Bolt's supremacy, but is his confidence justified? Is it fair to laud an athlete like Bolt? Backed by an industry pushing the limits of sports science, over one like Owens, who was forced to retire in his 20s and pump gas to make ends meet. Researchers have analysed biomechanical data from history's fastest sprinters to determine who might have been the greatest of all. And in a surprising conclusion, there's less than a stride in it. There are at least as many great sports people as there are sports. But access and opportunity to these events is not always universal. Wealth is an obvious barrier for entry to many disciplines. Then there's geography, politics, education, and more besides. There is almost nothing stopping anybody in the world sprinting 100 meters in a straight line. Consequently, the title of the greatest sprinter in history is open to anybody who has ever laced up a pair of running shoes, crouched at the starting line, or head off into the distance at top speed for any imaginable reason. But that doesn't mean all 100 meters are equal. In 1936, for example, Jesse Owens was burdened by all the inequalities faced by African Americans in the United States at the time. Then he had to compete in front of the Nazi regime in a hostile Olympic stadium. Any challenges faced by Carl Lewis in Los Angeles or Usain Bolt in Beijing are minor by comparison. Furthermore, the race conditions Owens was expected to compete in cannot be compared to those of modern day. As an athlete, he wasn't backed by physiotherapists, coaches, and sports scientists to tailor his training and diet. Instead of cushioned athletics tracks, he ran on energy-sapping cinders, traveling the world with a lucky spade to dig out his footholds at the starting line. Bolt ran in space-age spikes that were practically weightless, with an army of support staff to ensure he was in peak physical condition for more than a decade. And he was able to parlay his success into wealth and celebrity.
If you want to be a star in the sports and you want to take over the sports, you have to make people know who you are as a person, not just as a track athlete.
Usain Bolt. This is your fourth laureus, equaling the record held by Roger Federer and Serena Williams, a remarkable achievement. Stop breaking people's records, please.
But as Bolt stockpiled glorious World Sport Awards, he remained the same happy-go-lucky kid from the small town of Sherwood Content. He seemed impervious to fame, embodying Jamaica's trademark laid-back cool.
most people feel like what I do and I act weird and goofy on the camera, they feel like I'm pretending, I'm acting, but that's how I genuinely am when I'm by myself or just chilling with my friends. That's just who I am as a person.
So what's the plan, Coach?
You're going to have a train twice a day for the rest of the year.
For the rest of the year, Coach?
I listened yesterday, and you said when the coach says it's time to go.
What can I say is the coach? Have a good day, Coach Biz.
Ouwens? His Olympic career ended aged 23 after just 1 Games.
I wanted to come home, and I really did. After all, I haven't seen my wife for 3 months, and I'm very glad to be back home to see her.
Ouwens returned to the United States from Berlin a hero and was hailed by massed crowds in New York City during a ticker-tape parade. But he wasn't invited to meet President Roosevelt at the White House, and at a ceremony dedicated to his feats in Manhattan, he wasn't allowed to enter via the front door. For all his greatness on the world stage, Ouwens returned to a country that persisted with barriers to the advancement of African-American men and women.
Jesse Owens came back to a country where he could be a celebrated hero for what he accomplished in 1936, but he did not have an occupation that he could move into professionally that would further that career.
Ouwens continued racing, but as soon as he attempted to make money from his speed, he was stripped of his amateur status, effectively ending his career. By 1937, he was out of the limelight, piecing together a living however he could. He was a gas station attendant, playground janitor, and manager of a dry cleaning firm. He even raced against horses for cash. Ouwens said, "People say that it was degrading for an Olympic champion to run against a horse, but what was I supposed to do? I had 4 gold medals, but you can't eat 4 gold medals." At Bolt's peak, researcher Ross Tucker attempted to account for these disparities in a comparative analysis, and what he identified was surprising. Applying Ouwens' biomechanical data onto modern conditions, the margin between the 2 sprinters would not be the 7/10 of a second suggested by their personal bests, but less than a stride. Despite all the modern advantages available to Bolt, after 80 years of specialization and incremental improvements, the difference between him and Ouwens was almost nothing. Who knows how great Ouwens actually was? Who knows how great some of the athletes could have been who emerged during the dark decades of doping? The numbers on the stopwatch may change, but perhaps the act of running at the limits of human capability remains constant. Does that make Yusain Bolt the greatest sprinter of all time for pushing those boundaries furthest for longest? Or Jesse Owens, a man given only one opportunity to prove himself on the biggest stage, during which he overcame historic prejudice and made a mockery of Adolf Hitler's racism? One thing is for sure, the next contender has a lot to live up to.